And hello, my listeners. We're at chapter 29, verse 5 of the book of Job. And how are you doing today? Continuing, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me, when I washed my steps with butter, and the rock poured me out rivers of oil, when I went out of the gate through the city, when I prepared my seat in the street. Notes. Well, he's talking about, although Job does not know it, the Almighty is with him now evermore, and his presence is actually growing stronger, even though he cannot actually see it. And well, these verses right here pertain to Job's. He was extremely wealthy. Okay, verse 7. I'll go ahead and read it again. When I went out to the gate through the city, when I prepared my seat in the street. Now it was customary for elders of the city to sit in the open place at the entrance of the gates. Judgment was meted out there, and many other activities were carried on as well. Sort of like a public civic meeting place, if you will. Verse 8, the young men saw me and hid themselves, and the aged arose and stood up. Notes. In other words, Job was very well respected. The touch of God on his life was obvious and very evident to everyone. They knew that Job was someone that they could count on to cut the mustard when the mustard needed cut. Verse 9. The princes refrained from talking and laid their hand on their mouth. The nobles held their peace and their tongue cleaved to the roof of their mouth. Notes. They would not be foolish enough to actually speak whenever Job was actually present because of his wisdom. And whatever it is that they knew, Job knew something just a little bit more than they did, so he was incredibly intelligent. Verse 11, when the ear heard me, then it blessed me, and when they saw me, it gave witness to me, because I delivered the poor who cried and the fatherless, and him who had none to help him. Notes. They knew that Job would be fair in his judgment, and he could get things done that way. Verse 13. The blessing of him who was ready to perish came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. Notes. Now think about this. None of these poor, fatherless, or widows would now speak a kind word of him. No doubt he had helped thousands or maybe even tens of thousands, but no one seemed to remember his kindness to them. Well, such is humanity. Verse 14. I put on righteousness and it clothed me. My judgment was as a robe and a diadem. Notes. The word of the Lord was his garment. Okay, that's kind of what he's saying. That's what a diadem actually is. A robe and diadem, I should say. It was a suit of very, very fancy clothes. Verse 15. I was eyes to the blind, and feet was I to the lame. I was a father to the poor, and the cause which I knew not I searched out. Notes. A very good example of a person a lot like Job is Rabbi David Grossman. He takes care of the Migdal Or Foundation. You can Google that and search for it. It's Migdal Ohr, if I'm not mistaken. And you will definitely find a man who parallels Job as far as kindness and giving and caring. Where was I at? Okay, verse 17. And I broke the jaws of the wicked and plucked the spoil out of his teeth. Notes. Now this is my kind of talking right here. If the wicked were going to defraud the poor and Job found out about it, he'd show up on their front doorstep and straighten them out, if you know what I mean. They would have to answer to Job on a very extremely personal level, and they probably didn't fare too good. Verse 18. Then I said, I shall die in my nest, and I shall multiply my days as the sand. Notes. He's saying that there was really no clouds on the horizon. Everything's just going to be peachy. Continuing, my root was spread out by the waters, and the dew lay all night upon my branch. Notes. He's actually saying that at times he felt like he was invincible, and that nothing could destroy or harm Job in any major way. Continuing, my glory was fresh in me, and my bow was renewed in my hand. Unto me men gave ear and waited and kept silence at my counsel. Notes. He's saying that Job had the last word because he had the smartest words. Verse 22, after my words they spoke not again, and my speech dropped upon them. Notes. He's saying that people knew that his judgments could not be actually improved upon because they were so impeccably correct. We need a couple of judges like that in our world nowadays. Actually, we need quite a few more. No more slaps on the wrist and letting people go out and do whatever they want to and then giving them another slap. They need to go to jail for some of the things that they've done. Anyways, 23, and they waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the latter rain. Notes. He's saying that they knew that Job could actually help them if they simply just listened to what he had to say. Verse 24, if I laughed on them, they believed it not, and the light of my countenance they cast not down. Notes. He's saying that whenever Job smiled upon someone, they counted that as a kind of blessing. It was sort of like a supreme honor. Verse 25. I chose out their way and sat chief and dwelt as a king in the army, as one who comforts the mourners. Notes. Now Job was a really amazing individual. He's saying here that he was one of the kinds of people to whom people could look at whenever they were having times of great distress. Chapter 30. But now they who are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock. Notes. As high as he had been in the estimation of others, as low he has actually fallen. So that was quite a slug to the stomach to actually have to deal with this. Verse 2. Yes, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished. Notes. Job is saying that now it is as if he is so old that he is actually of no more worth. Boy, he could not have ever have been more wrong. When I pass away, Job is going to be one of the first people that I search for in heaven. I mean, I'm going to be real good friends with him. Verse 3. For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former times desolate and waste. Notes. He's saying this about himself. He says he looks at himself as like a pile of rubble. He's completely wasted and ruined. Verse 4. Who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. Notes. Now he's saying that he went from eating at the king's tables. Job is now eating the scraps that are left behind. That's kind of a figure of speech here. Well, at least that's my opinion of it. He's going from high to low is what he said. Verse 5. They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Note. Job is looked at as no more than a human joke. He's basically went from living in a palace or a mansion to a hole in the ground, basically, is what he's saying. He's using that as a kind of a comparison, if you will. Verse 7. Among the bushes they brayed, and under the nettles they were gathered together. Notes. He's saying that he has been reduced to scavenging for food. Verse 8. They were children of fools, yes, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. Notes, now as stated, the flotsam of humanity. Verse 9, and now am I their song, yes, I am their byword. Notes, now he said all that to say this. The absolute lowest of the low, the sons of Belial, are now ridiculing Job, okay? They actually look down on him. I mean, think of the most dirty, rotten bum that you can think of, and I'm sure that you can think of a homeless person and how odiferous they can be at times. Even the lowest people, the drunks, the alcoholics, the adulterers, the people who heaped up trouble, they are now ridiculing Job. Verse 10, they abhor me. They flee far from me and spare not to spit in my face. Notes, they mocked him and they ridiculed him with ribald songs. Standing at a distance, they spat at him. Now, because God had loosed his scourge and afflicted him, they too cast off all restraint in their persecution of him. As rabble, they stood at the right hand to accuse him. They gave him no standing room in any court of justice and laid snares for him. They did their best to add to his sufferings, even though doing so brought them no actual personal profit. That's a rather sad state of affairs. Verse 11, because he has loosed my cord and afflicted me, they have also let loose the bridle before me. Notes, their reasoning here is that if God has turned his back against Job, then he was now fair game, and they would be righteous by doing the same thing. Well, the fact of the matter is, God had not turned against Job. So, number one, their thinking was wrong. And number two, to treat anybody like they're fair game is they're just basically bullying him. Verse 12, upon my right hand rise the youth. They push away my feet, and they raise up against me the ways of their destruction. They mar my path. They set forward my calamity, and they have no helper. Notes, they've made sport of Job, and now they're setting traps in his path to cause even more problems for him. Verse 14, they came upon me as a wide breaking of waters. In the desolation they rolled themselves upon me. Notes, he's saying that when one began to taunt Job, then they all began to taunt Job. Verse 15, terrors are turned upon me. They pursue my soul as the wind, and my welfare passes away as a cloud. Notes, not only is his physical and financial welfare in really seriously bad shape, but he fears now for his very soul and life. Verse 16, and now my soul is poured out upon me. The days of affliction have taken hold upon me. My bones are pierced in me in the night season, and my sinews take no rest. Notes, he's saying that he has gnawing pains all over his body and in it. Verse 18, by the great force of my disease is my garment changed. It binds me about as the collar of my coat. Notes, along with all the insults and the trouble that he's having from these people, Job's physical condition seems to be deteriorating by the hour. The clothes that he actually does have on him are actually sticking to his skin because it's rotting away because of the leprosy. If you've ever seen someone with leprosy, you know it's rather nasty to actually look upon that. Verse 19, he has cast me into the mire, and I am become like dust and ashes. Notes, perhaps it is not possible for God to sanctify the carnal self without the individual in some way experiencing dust and ashes. We will have to pick up in chapter 30, verse 20 of the book of Job. Thank you, and God bless.